Truth be hanged. The Salem Witch Trials. The rights of justice and a fair trial should belong to all people. However, during the Salem witch trials of 1692, those important values were either deeply corrupted or outright ignored. As the Massachusetts colony became entangled in the witch hunt frenzy, its accusers, judges, and bystanders neglected their individual responsibilities to tell the truth, to seek the truth, and to speak up against injustice. The lessons from this appalling event helped shape our country's modern justice system. To comprehend this indelible tragedy, we must delve into the harsh, unforgiving lives of the Massachusetts settlers. In the late 17th century, colonists had to work hard just to survive. Tensions from fear of Indian raids and bitter land feuds among neighbors also ran high. The idea of witchcraft was not new. Tens of thousands were executed for witchcraft in Europe alone for centuries before. So, in the minds of these colonists, the inexplicable behaviors of some of the Salem girls were likely caused by witchcraft, especially after local physician, Dr. Griggs, first diagnosed them, saying, "An evil hand is upon them." Within less than a year, 19 people had been hanged, 1 man pressed to death, and at least 5 known others died in prison. 2 dogs were also killed, showing the extent of the paranoia. The Puritans were shaken by thoughts of witches in their community. Was this a punishment from God? Their strict religion, Puritanism, called for a pure society, rid of evil and sin. This involved long hours of church, Bible reading, and prayer. Samuel Parris, a Harvard dropout and failed merchant, became the new minister of Salem Village, preaching intense sermons on the evil work and temptations of the devil. The origins of this crisis can be traced back to a secret fortune-telling group of girls. They met in Parris's own home with his Carib Indian slave, Tituba. After his daughter, Betty, and niece, Abigail Williams, perceived a dark omen, they began exhibiting unusual behaviors, from contorting their bodies and screaming as if in agony, to staring blankly for hours and even throwing Bibles. This set the stage for the calamities that followed. At every step of this travesty, the accusers chose to ignore their responsibility to tell the truth. But why? Why did they do this? While the answer to this question remains a mystery 300 years later, theories abound. The most common is that the girls were doing it for fun. Oppressed young girls, normally seen but not heard, felt empowered by the attention. Some propose that land feuds between neighboring families fueled the fires of accusations. Consider 30-year-old Ann Putnam, among the most vocal of the accusers, whose family gained new property at the expense of those convicted. Scientists have suggested ergot poisoning from rye bread made with contaminated water, which can cause spasms, seizures, and hallucinations. But it's interesting to note that whenever an accused witch confessed, the girl's seizures would stop, a remarkable coincidence. Another possibility is conversion disorder, physical symptoms induced by an emotional trigger. The girls may have genuinely believed that they were bewitched. Whatever the accuser's impetus, they should have told the truth, period. But they didn't, leading to a cascade of defensive allegations. Servant Mary Warren tried to tell the truth, recanting her previous accusations against John and Elizabeth Proctor. Unfortunately, she succumbed to pressure from the other girls and convicted her employers again. Ann Putnam Jr., who had also been a very active accuser, made a public apology 14 years after the trials. "It was a great delusion of Satan that deceived me in that sad time, whereby I justly fear I have been instrumental, with others, though ignorantly and unwittingly, to bring upon myself and this land the guilt of innocent blood." Once a finger was pointed, accused witches had few personal, property, and court rights. They had the right to a trial, but those trials were hardly fair as they were tainted by spectral evidence, visions which, by definition, could only be seen by the accusers.
And the fact that this evidence was just witness, just hearsay, it was enough to condemn someone to death.
Defendants did have the option to confess and be let go. Of the 200 people accused, about 50 did this. If defendants could not afford a lawyer during their trial, they had to defend themselves, such as 71-year-old Rebecca Nurse. Well, as to this thing, I am as innocent as the child unborn. But surely what sin hath God found out in me, unrepented of, that he should lay such an affliction upon me in my old age? Though a respected elder, she was still hanged on Gallows Hill. Arrested witches even had to pay for their jail fees, and once condemned, their property would be confiscated. The chief responsibility of seeking the truth lay on the courts, whose job it was to consider the evidence and render just verdicts.
While the judges were looking at it from a law perspective, this was dealing with the devil, which was a part of their religion. So it's a very fine line during the witch trials. And God, was inherent in law because of the religion.
At the hanging of George Burroughs, the former Salem village reverend, he recited the Lord's Prayer flawlessly, an act believed impossible for witches, causing onlookers to protest his execution. But prominent minister Cotton Mather insisted, "The devil has often been transformed into an angel of light." Perhaps the biggest responsibility fell on the people. Surely many realized that what was going on was arbitrary, but only a few had the courage to speak up against the escalating injustice.
It was everybody's responsibility to make sure that if the judges and magistrates were wrong, that the community as a whole would rise together and speak on behalf of the innocent victims.
39 of Rebecca Nurse's neighbors petitioned on her behalf, no doubt aware that this made themselves suspects. Ultimately, each individual weighed their responsibility to speak up against the price of hazarding their own lives. Yet on October 3rd, author and pamphleteer Reverend Increase Mather, despite his son's previous participation in the trials, warned against the court's dangerous dependence on spectral evidence. It were better that 10 suspected witches should escape than one innocent person should be condemned. Around the same time, the First Lady of Massachusetts was named as a witch. Her husband, Governor Phipps, prompted by these two developments, immediately banned spectral evidence. Within the month, he abolished both current trials and future arrests, and began the process of releasing or pardoning the remaining prisoners. 5 years later, the Massachusetts General Court ordered a mournful day of fasting and prayer in honor of those who died, and Samuel Parris was dismissed as minister of Salem Village. Some closure came in 1702, when the Massachusetts General Court officially deemed the 1692 trials unlawful. Also, a modest enquiry into the nature of witchcraft by John Hale was published after the conflicted clergyman's death. It described how the community's judgment had been infatuated by fear of witches, although he didn't deny their existence. A case that's especially interesting to me is that of Anne Foster, my ancestor. Anne denied being in league with the devil, resisting confession even under torture. But her resolve collapsed when her own daughter, Mary Lacey, accused her of being a witch to save herself and her unborn baby. Anne then confessed, presumably out of love for her daughter and grandchild. Unfortunately, the governor's pardon came too late for her. She died in prison on December 3, 1692. The frightful inferno that for a time consumed these Massachusetts communities also left a positive legacy. Once the depth of the trial's injustice could be fully absorbed, our nation's founders took it into account. Salem's grievous events helped mold our modern view of justice in a fair trial. Now everyone has the right to a lawyer. Even if they can't afford one will be appointed to them. Also,
people were accused and acquitted and then retried, which is something we would never allow in a court system today.
This guaranteed right, known as double jeopardy, is ensured in the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The responsibility of judges and juries to be neutral and unbiased are core values of our justice system, and spectral evidence is definitely not allowed. What's more, a defendant today is innocent until proven guilty. The Salem witch trials established a crucial rung on the ladder of our legal system.